In this episode, Rainbow Dash finally gets accepted into the Wonderbolts Training Academy, which, interestingly enough, is the first all-Pegasus facility we've seen that's actually built on solid ground. At the academy, Rainbow meets another Pegasus named Lightning Dust, who's practically her equal. Lightning Dust gains a slight advantage, though, by pushing herself harder and taking more chances. But while she's breaking records left and right, it becomes a problem when she also starts putting her teammates at risk. Eventually, she convinces Rainbow to help form a tornado to help clear clouds out of the sky faster. The tornado goes out of control, big surprise, and while that's bad enough for the Wonderbolt trainees, it's much worse when the other main five show up just at that moment to pay Rainbow a visit. Thankfully, she manages to save them with a cloud. Alright, hold on, I just have to address this because we're never told what's going on here. In the episode Sonic Rainboom, it's made very clear that only Pegasi can interact with clouds. In that episode, Twilight also finds a spell that allows unicorns and earth ponies to walk on clouds while they visit Rainbow's hometown. But are we to assume that the spell from that episode is still in effect? Because she didn't cast it on Rarity, or did she cast it all over again on the entire group and they just didn't say anything? Or is it possible that the writers just shrugged their shoulders and went, it's a cartoon, whatever. Okay, I'm going to assume it's the second one. She probably just cast the spell again. But I still have to bring it up because no one ever says anything about it. I mean, I get that it's a kid show about talking horsies, but you gotta follow your own rules. If you specifically tell us in the very first season that what we're seeing here absolutely cannot happen without a cloud walking spell, then yes, establishing that there is actually a cloud walking spell in effect is pretty important. Though I do like how Fluttershy gets embarrassed at having to be rescued. Yes, despite being unclear about the cloud walking spell, they still remember that Fluttershy's wings don't work when she gets scared and that she gets embarrassed in front of other Pegasi because she's a weak flyer. Getting back to the main story though, Rainbow's had enough. She walks into Spitfire's office and quits on the basis that her friends almost just died, and yet Lightning only seems to be getting rewarded despite this and other careless behavior that she's shown recently. But of course, in the end, Spitfire sides with Rainbow Dash and makes her a team leader while kicking Lightning Dust out of the academy, publicly humiliating her and presumably farting in her face for good measure. The funny thing is though, Lightning Dust is acting almost exactly like Rainbow Dash did back in Ponyville. But that's kind of the point. This isn't Ponyville anymore. This is the Wonderbolts. This is Rainbow Dash's lifelong dream. And it's actually kind of nice to see her taking things a bit more seriously. I mean, of course she still tries to push herself to be the best, but she also shows more consideration for her teammates, and she also demonstrates that she can follow orders effectively even if her pride gets hurt a little sometimes. And that's extremely important if your goal is to work in this kind of environment, and those qualities especially are where Rainbow Dash needed to prove herself. Ultimately, my biggest problem here is with Spitfire. And no, I don't mean that she sounds different. I understand that she's on the job this time and has to be in command. What I mean is that this episode seems to ignore the fact that Rainbow and Spitfire already know each other. The dialogue in some scenes makes it sound like these two have literally never met before. I mean, even when they're talking in private, Spitfire calls her newbie. It also feels a bit unnecessary when Spitfire calls Rainbow back at the end and then practically repeats the same thing that Rainbow already said just a minute earlier. But overall, I think most of the problems here point to a common issue throughout. This episode is just sloppy with the continuity. Now, besides all that other stuff with Spitfire and the maybe iffy cloud thing, we get a major long-term change for Rainbow Dash, as she's officially off training at Wonderbolt Boot Camp. But then off-screen, they hit the reset button and she's back in Ponyville the very next week. I don't know, maybe it's a preliminary trial program or something, but still, the way this particular episode is handled in that regard is very confusing. At the same time though, we learn more about the Wonderbolts and we get to see a different side of Rainbow Dash as she spends the majority of the time away from her friends and has to make some legitimately tough choices. Ultimately, many of the problems here do at least have plausible explanations as they end up raising nagging little questions more than anything else. But as a self-contained story, this one was actually pretty good. Wonderbolts Academy gets a 7 out of 10. As a side note, I've noticed that many of the negative reactions to this episode come from the feeling that it has too many similarities to the movie Top Gun. Now personally, I can't really say too much about that because as surprising as this might be, I really haven't seen Top Gun, though I did own the NES game for some reason. As for the movie, I have no idea if that would have influenced my opinion, but if what everyone says is true, then I definitely look forward to seeing Tom Cruise on the Dizatron.